art, sculpture. So many times history and stories are told through art form. Even the story about the Buddha. However, when time and place changes, so the art. And more than one meaning can hide behind a sculpture.
The birth in art has certain sub-narratives. The narrative of the preceding part, just before the birth, prior to birth or preceding the birth, the Bodhisattva Shvetaketu in the Tushita heaven, the visual arts normally use the idea of the proclamation of the impending descent of the Bodhisattva or show him as teaching the gods. And from the earliest representation of what is believed by most to be the proclamation is at Bharhut, is from Bharhut, now in the Indian Museum, Calcutta. I am not aware if it is travelling for the Singapore exhibition, but Arhat Gutta announces the descent of the Buddha. The next important scene is Bodhisattva's rebirth, often combined with the conception or Maya Devi's dream, showing Shaddantam Varanam Shvetam descending, Garbham Avishantam, as we had just mentioned. And again, for this too, we have the earliest representation at the Bharhut Stupa with an inscription, Maya Devi reclining with the lamp suggesting the night. The Shaddantam Shvetam Airavatam Iva is touching with his paw the side of Maya Devi and is suggestive of the birth that would happen from the side. It would, that the Bodhisattva is born from the side. Here is an attendant in Anjali Hasta and two other, one Chauri bearer and another attendant, putting their hands on the ear and proclaiming as though a miracle is about to happen. This is not Maya Devi. This is of course clearly inscribed Chanda Yakshi. Here is the inscription clearly Chanda Yakshi, and here on the branch of the tree, but she holds the branch very, very carefully, is clearly a fertility icon connecting both with the Vrikshaka and the Dohada. The Dohada being the desire at the time of pregnancy, the desire to give birth, the desire that is associated with essentially fertility, fecundity and pregnancy. And you have this representation in ancient Indian art from the Mauryan times in the small, even in the small ring stones. The association of the tree with the woman and flow of the connection is twofold, the woman with the tree and the tree with the woman, both ways. So when we talk about the Vrikshaka Shalabhanjika, we are talking about the Dohada, the whole legend of a beautiful woman kicking the Ashoka tree and causing it to blossom, is the whole idea of the fertility, and the reverse of the woman entwining herself with the tree, as in the Vrikshaka motif, is what would have inspired the idea of Maya Devi giving birth to the Bodhisattva. The whole idea is the identity of the tree and the woman are merging together and effecting both. You see that the icons become, by the time of the Kushan Mathura period, the icons become very frankly sensuous. There is the idea of birth is moving away, and sensuality and sexuality seems to overtake these very explicitly sensuous depictions, also arising from the same motif. Now she holds on to the girdle, ready to loosen it, and it's an extremely sensuous depiction of the same iconography. Buddhism has spread across Asia. In India, it is restricted to a few regions and is slowly being dominated by other religions, especially Hinduism of the medieval period. So, what happens to this fertility iconography in another context is something that I want to deal with within India itself, because within India, how the meanings are changing is a process that is also relevant to how newer meanings are arising in the newer lands where the Buddha has traveled. Now, we have covered the Shalabhanjika, Vrikshaka, Maya Devi, the better known aspect of the iconographic transference of the birth, but we are now looking at what happens when Hindu architecture begins to dominate the landscape of the country, and how does the Maya Devi iconography then proceed from there. Already the iconography of the child next to the woman under a tree has developed. Now the artists remodel it in a different way. We earlier saw the Vrikshaka on the L-shaped brackets of the Torana. At Sanchi and at other places, the L-shaped brackets carried this absolutely graceful, dynamic imagery of the woman under the tree and the fruiting tree here, the Amrabhanjika in this case, the mango tree here. Now, the presence of freestanding Toranas begins to decline. The last few you see in Pavaya in a Hindu context in the Gupta period, and then it moves the Toran as a point of entry into a sacred space, the liminal, the point of liminality or the zone of liminality yields its architectural context to the Dwara or the doorway. So you move it is also a point of entry into sacred space. Now it is adapted in a Hindu context in India, and first you see it happening, you first see this transition happening at the Gautami Putra cave in Nasik. And here you see how the idea of the Torana as a zone of liminality merges with the idea of the Dwara or the doorway as a zone of liminality. Now this is the entry into the cave, and instead of a freestanding Torana, what you have here is the Torana is appliqued, or let us say carved in relief onto the doorway. And what does it suggest? It suggests the transference of the idea of the Torana onto the Dwara. And here you have the actual definition of the door frame evolving, because you have Mithunas and you have the garland of the Toran, you have the whole structure of the Toran, you have the Yaksha figures which then later become the Pratihara figures of the Hindu temple. You see, this becomes the Pratihara, whether it is Shaiva or Vaishnava or Saura, and this then becomes what happens then to the beautiful Shalabhanjikas. In the Nasik Toran we do not have them, but or the Nasik Dwara, or let us say the Nasik Dwara Torana, we do not have that depiction. The river goddess and the Vrikshaka are side by side in an identical iconography, except that Ganga has Makara Vahana, that is the only difference. Even the posture is the same. It's like the hands are a mirror image, but other than that, and in several of them, a child stands next. There is a change of context. The wherewithal the artist uses induces a change in meaning, and this changing meaning is also a reality of the traveling of Buddhism across Asia. Finding a similar iconography does not necessarily suggest the same meaning. There is a great amount of localization of the local culture that comes into the legend that carries forward. So I would say one should talk about not this yesterday I was telling Professor Skilling in a Hindu context that not talk about the Indianization of Southeast Asia, but talk probably about the Javanization and the Thaiization of the Indian, and it should be with joy that this should happen, because change is a matter that has to happen. Now, my point in carrying this forward, that what happens to Maya Devi later in India is to show that yes, that beautiful iconography survives in other contexts that become more dominant in the region.